Open Secrets senior investigator Raisa Petha has welcomed the suspension of National Prosecuting Authority Gauteng South Director, Advocate Andrew Chauke. President Cyril Ramaphosa yesterday announcing that this will be with immediate effect, pending the outcome of an inquiry into his fitness to hold office. Chauke is accused of mishandling high-profile cases and has been criticized for his failure to prosecute former crime intelligence boss Richard Dullah for murder. Now, Petha says the move is long overdue.
This case has been sitting on Ramaphosa's desk for 2 years now. And so it's taken quite a length of time for Chauke to be suspended pending this inquiry. In 2023, the NDPP, Shamila Batoy, wrote to the president to say, please suspend Chauke pending his fitness to hold office, an inquiry into his fitness to hold office. And so really it's about time this action was taken. He holds a very senior position as the leader of prosecutions, the prosecutorial boss in Gauteng. And there are a number of important cases that have been sitting on his desk, including the Prasa case, the state capture corruption case there, and several others. So this is good news.
Well, let's get more reaction to this now, and we're joined by the Dullah Omar Institute senior researcher, Dr. Jean Redpath. Dr. Redpath, good evening to you. Thank you very much for your time. So this is long overdue, as you've heard in that comment, and she's not the first to say that. Question is, how severe has the damage and trust been in the intervening period?
So I think the damage has been great, not only in terms of the lack of trust that people might feel in prosecutions, particularly in the relevant division, South Gauteng. But if one looks at the data around prosecutions in South Gauteng, particularly of serious commercial crime, between 2019 and the most recent available data, one sees something of a collapse in prosecutions in South Gauteng. Yes, there was a reduction across the board, across the country, but it is most pronounced and most severe in South Gauteng, to the extent that it really looks that that division is not producing prosecutions and cases to the extent that it should.
Yeah, there have been many labels against Advocate Chauke. This is someone who has been said to be an alleged state capture enabler. Others will say he weaponized the NPA to protect the politically powerful and corrupt. Is this about one individual, or is this merely a demonstration that you deal with one possibly corrupt element and the institution stands a chance to regenerate itself?
Well, I think that unfortunately it is not only one individual in the NPA. We know that in the Omatosa case, about which you spoke earlier on, that the prosecutor in that case is currently being internally investigated by the NPA. One hopes that that investigation will extend beyond the Omatosa matter, but to other matters in which he has been involved, such as the Forte matter, because there have been concerns about prosecutorial conduct there. So I don't think it is enough for the Gauteng boss to be suspended. Remember, he has only been suspended. There must still be an inquiry. Somebody still has to be appointed to run that inquiry. And there still has to be a finding by that inquiry, which will then result in a recommendation to the president, which must then be confirmed by Parliament. So the process is by no means over. There is still a way to go before it is in fact confirmed that Chauke would be removed from the post.
Advocate Chauke has long denied the allegations against him. In fact, he spoke to this channel, I think it was in 2023. And we're now where we are, where he is suspended. And the most recent comments that really got everyone to sit up and listen was when the head of the NPA, Advocate Batoy, was on this very show you are talking to, saying that the NPA had been infiltrated by those who do not have the interests of justice at heart, although she would later walk back those comments in other interviews, in other media platforms. But when she said there are those who have infiltrated this institution with nefarious ends, do you think that this may have been in reference to people like Advocate Andrew Chauke?
Certainly, I think that that may have been top of her mind, and it has been incredibly frustrating for her that this letter was sent almost 2 years ago, in August 2023, with this cloud hanging over. And Chauke should welcome the opportunity for an inquiry to establish his innocence, if that is in fact the case. We've had 2 such inquiries in South Africa previously. The Ginwala Commission, it was called a commission, even though it was an inquiry into Vusi Pikoli. In that instance, the Ginwala Commission found that he should not be removed. Vusi Pikoli should not be removed. In the Magoro inquiry, Mkobo Jiba and Lawrence Mwewe were under the spotlight, and the evidence was able to be put in the public domain. So we have an opportunity in this inquiry process to learn more about exactly what has gone down and exactly what the allegations and evidence are. And so then the president will be able to make a decision based on the evidence heard in the inquiry and the inquiry leader's recommendation in that regard.
How deeply regrettable is it that the president took almost 2 years to act on this? And you've mentioned already that the damage has been severe. Public trust in the president himself and the speed with which he makes decisions.
Yes, certainly it is deeply regrettable, especially since there is an inquiry process that follows any suspension. So, the delay continues. Luckily enough, the legislation provides that the time period between the suspension and the decision to remove or not may not be longer than 12 months. So at least we know that within 12 months we will have a final decision. But there really is very little reason to have delayed for 2 years when there are allegations in the public domain. These allegations, in fact, emerged before 2020. And when the public is questioning the integrity of a senior person who makes decisions whether to prosecute or not on all cases in South Gauteng, he is the final arbiter of all cases in South Gauteng, to have that doubt hanging over for as long as 2 years without an inquiry to clear the air is really very regrettable.
Dr. Redpath, can I just say this, that it would appear that things are moving apace after the allegations that have been made by General Mkhwanazi, the police commissioner in KwaZulu-Natal. There's a commission of inquiry that has now been set up, or at least is afoot, to probe what has been said by Mkhwanazi about the police management, including politicians. There's a network of criminality, basically, that he said there is. Then you see this decision around Advocate Chauke. Do you think that the South African criminal justice finally stands a chance of rewriting and fixing what has been wrong for the longest of time?
Certainly, these are good signs, and we can also point to the renewed vigor in Parliament, which is actually starting to exercise its oversight role, and also to be more proactive in tailoring legislation and not just accepting the legislation that is brought to it by executive government. However, it is too soon to say that the tide has turned. We know that the whole of crime intelligence was pretty much captured. A lot needs to be done to rescue the South African Police Service from that capture that occurred, which was not confined to crime intelligence, but was mostly present in crime intelligence. And an aspect of that will be that there is no legislation which provides for crime intelligence in the South African Police Service, even though the Constitution demands this. So there is an opportunity now to correct a lot of the shortcomings in our legislation, which include that the National Prosecuting Authority is under the thumb of the Department of Justice in terms of its finances. It needs to be set free, and this can be done by Parliament. The SAPS Act needs to be thoroughly overhauled so that the police are much more transparent, that certain requirements are put in place. For example, at some time in the last 10 to 15 years, rank promotion exams were taken away in the South African Police Service. These kinds of things need to be reintroduced to ensure that people are not appointed horizontally who are not qualified and who are not cultivated through the SAP system and people of integrity. So it looks promising in terms of a turning of the tide, but I do not think that we are out of the woods yet, and civil society, the public, Parliament must continue to push for greater reforms to occur.
Final question. Advocate Shamila Batoy retires in January of 2026. Can she hope to go away having turned the narrative that says she has been a complete failure in this particular role, given what is going to happen, i.e. Advocate Andrew Chauke?
So I think that Advocate Batoy has been very unlucky to have had her tenure straddle the time of the COVID-19 lockdowns. During that time, various court divisions made their own decisions about what matters they would hear, and there was a massive slowdown of the whole criminal justice system. Now, this was beyond the capacity of the NPA on its own to address, and created a huge slowdown also in the state capture cases, which means that you can kind of subtract 2 years from her productive tenure. So it's a court slowdown that has been partly to blame. But if we look at her broader record, I'm sure most people will continue to criticize her in terms of the failure to actually have convictions. However, we see that a lot of cases are in the pipeline now that were not there before. And it takes a long time to prepare cases and for cases to actually come on the roll. And one of the problems in our criminal justice system that absolutely has to be fixed, and which is beyond just the NPA, is this very slow pace in our courts, where matters are not postponed for a month or a week, but for 6 months or for a year.
Yeah.
And that kind of timeline simply does not work for justice. The longer we have data which shows that the longer a case is on the roll, the more likely the matter is not to be to result in a successful conviction. And that really needs to be addressed. And that is not just the NPA, that is the judiciary, that is the whole court system. It is even the Department of Public Works, who's responsible for keeping the lights on. We've seen this week the Palm Ridge Court, commercial court, was down for 2 weeks because there was no electricity. This is outrageous. It absolutely cannot continue to be the case. We need to speed up the way our courts work, and that is going to require political will along the whole system.
Dr. Jean Redpath, thank you very much for your time and insights. She is a senior researcher at the Dullah Omar Institute.